Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Office Hours. If you're watching YouTube, you'll see a little link down below. You click on that, and you'll end up in Zoom. If you click on that, you'll end the link that's in Zoom. You'll end up in Mukana, and that's where you become a producer for the show. You actually run the show with your questions, your voting, and your chat. Really, the show is for you, and we usually don't have much of a plan other than whatever the producers want. So go ahead and ask those questions and vote on those questions there. Now, if you want to actually, step down into the pit, into the gladiator pit of the panel, instead of sitting in the nice, comfortable seats of the stands, you just need to be here by 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Obviously, I was watching Gladiator last night. So anyway, so you can 6:40 a.m. where we do the mic checks. You can get here as early as 6 and just check out your kit. Sometimes sometimes we're just meandering around between 6 and 6:40. It's really there for people to just check out their system and make sure it's working. This morning became almost another second hour about the construction of violins. So it was amazing. So Todd Reynolds just started talking about all the $150,000 bows and how this stuff gets done and what the difference is and everything else. So it almost became another second hour. So if you can get here early, I'd recommend it. It's actually a pretty good time. Anyway, we start at 7 o'clock with general questions, any general questions that you may have around media or virtual production or fair game. And then we have a second hour, 8 o'clock. We'll start talking about, today we'll talk about education. So the live stream is actually going to stop at the end of the first hour. The education stuff is kind of more nuts and bolts right now, and so we're going to not stream it to YouTube. And so the second hour will be about education, and then later this afternoon is the last, for now, the last of the season, Mad in the Kitchens. And so we'll have 3 o'clock. We'll open the doors and have people start chatting amongst themselves. You get to see the show get built up. Then at 5 o'clock the show starts, and at 6:30 we switch over to the post show where we talk about what happened. And so it should be good. It's the last one. It's come a long way in 8 episodes, quite a thing. So hopefully we'll see you there. Let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Oh, before I do that, one last thing. There is a volunteer form that, or a production group form that we have in the top of the email that you get every morning. We're really going to start doing some really interesting things, and so we're interested in people, getting involved if they want to. If you want to learn how to do a lot of this stuff together, then go ahead and sign up for that form. It's going to be, we're going to probably not flip the switch on it until the 14th, where we'll start talking to people and reaching out. But we'd highly recommend, if you're interested in participating, to jump in, because we're going to start building a bunch of groups with that, with the folks that filled that out. All right, Guy, what's the first question?
First one's coming in from Matt Wood in Newcastle upon Tyne, and he says, ISADORA, just wow. I'm interested in how the panel are thinking about incorporating this into their workflow.
I thought that was just an incredible hour, that Mark gave us yesterday, and I'm super excited about it. I'm really thinking one of the things that we're talking about is being able to using ISADORA, tie controls the same way that Andy Coluccio is doing with Victor, tie controls back to master control, so that anybody in office hours could volunteer, for instance, to work on the switcher or mixer or other things using ISADORA to build the interface, and then integrating with the equipment that we have. So that's one of the things we're thinking about. Go ahead, George.
So obviously there's a lot there. I started playing with it while Michael was still here yesterday, had questions for him in the breakout room. And I started playing with it after. Obviously, video playback was one of the big things I started thinking about yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously pushing things to vMix, and like Alex said, just various places. But what I discovered is you just need to start thinking about it as a big patch panel. If you understand a little bit about nodes, then you'll have no issues. The big thing you should know about is double click on the screen to expose things that you want to patch. So that was it for me yesterday.
Yeah, go ahead, Jesse.
I'd like to try some things in the 3D space. It almost feels like it's got some of the abilities of an Unreal Engine, but a much simpler, more straightforward interface. So we'll see what it can do, but I like things that are quick, and that seems like you can do things really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. TJ?
One thing that people may not realize is you can download it and play with almost everything in it. The only limitation on the demo version is you can't save your work. So you can play with everything, and if you come up with something awesome, then, and you can rent it for a short time. So if you needed it for a shorter time span, there's options to license it for like a month or a year, as opposed to buying the full outright version.
Go ahead,
Yeah, I
Tommy.
think a week was only $10.
Yeah, 10, Tommy?
Yeah, I was wondering, is that something we're going to need on our end in our computer as well, or is that going to all be handled by you?
So when we give someone control, the way it works, I believe that if you don't need to edit it, we can just send you an instance. And so you won't have to own anything on your end to make it work. Go ahead, TJ.
Yes, that is exactly correct. That is how we are doing it right now with Victor and me and Andy Carluccio. He built the panel that I use. I installed ISADORA, but I'm only in demo mode right now. I am going to be licensing it because I do want to play with it. But then, so anybody that needs to do that particular thing that the control panel does not need a licensed copy.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Chris Taylor in Winter Park, Florida. And he says, on Zoom Test Kitchen yesterday, the Zoom rep mentioned that Zoom will shortly turn on NDI presenter source feeds and isolated audio. How will this change your current Office Hours 2.0 workflow chain?
If they make that available to the SDI outputs, it'll change it a lot. If they don't, probably not much right now. You know, I have a hardware interface, and changing to NDI would be a big lift on our end. So that would be probably not something I'd do immediately. Go ahead, George.
Guy and I were both excited about it, but as Alex just mentioned, if they're going to lock it down to Zoom rooms, I don't see how it's going to be beneficial to the masses.
I don't know if it's beneficial to the masses. I mean, I think that what we're doing when we start breaking those things out is a pretty specialized thing to do. So I don't know if it. I feel like Zoom rooms is the easiest one for them to work on because it doesn't affect so many things. It's an easier one for them to manage. So I think it makes sense for that, and especially if you're going to do a production. I guess the one thing it does is that because Zoom rooms are a little tricky in AWS, not being able to, they either have to get the Zoom rooms to work in AWS or they have, to your point, or it gets harder. Go ahead, Jason.
I would say it's definitely in the beta stage right now. It's not ready for where it needs to be, but I'm really going to be interested to see what they do with it when NDI 5 comes out later at the end of the month.
Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, it really just depends on who it is that's working on it and what they want to do. I mean, somebody crazy like me, I have 17 Zoom rooms now, and I know how to operate them in the cloud. I'm one of the few people that figured it out. I mean, it took months to figure it out. So not everybody knows how to do it, but I was super pumped because if I can kick out 8 feeds, which they didn't give a number, Sam was pretty careful as to not, say that there's a specific number, but I think we can push pretty hard to go over 4, and we'll see what happens. But he said June and September are the 2 dates that's on the cycle for Zoom Room updates. So hopefully we see it in one of those. And yeah, it's not for everybody because $49 a month. I mean, if you're on enterprise, you can negotiate and you can get cheaper ones. But I want to build a workflow that's rentable, like a platform as a service, so that people don't have to go get 17 Zoom rooms. They can just fire up what we have. We just extract everybody out and give you a simple ISADORA type interface where you just log in and boop, 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 boop. We handle everything for you. So that's a good idea. That's the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Liberty White, and she says, I'm upgrading my network router, and I'd like to know what the panel thinks about the NETGEAR Nighthawk X6. I'm looking for something to take into the field.
Anyone? Any of our networking folks have any opinions about the NETGEAR? I have to admit, I'm not familiar with it.
Hello?
Oh, Tommy, you're on.
Yeah.
Can someone mute Tommy? Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Sorry, I was muting Tommy. So,
okay.
Yeah, I've used NETGEAR for many years. The routers are pretty solid. I know that they've just if you watch the NDI 5 stuff, that they were very excited to say that they're working with NDI 5 to do the pass through. So that might be a positive there. But they're very flexible. I've run NETGEAR, the Nighthawk series, in standalone router mode. I've run them in AP mode, and I've run them in bridge mode. So you can definitely do some chaining and have a really good setup without having a mesh network around.
Go ahead, JJ.
If you have to buy NETGEAR, then if you have to buy something at Best Buy, then NETGEAR is probably the best way to go. But generally for production work, when something is at the core of what your functionality requires, buying over-the-counter Best Buy gear isn't necessarily the best option
What
for
would
your
you
business
suggest?
model. Cisco anything. Price point,
Ubiquity?
I haven't tested that. I haven't worked with as much Ubiquity gear because, again, it's really great work, and the firmware upgrades that occur. As far as QoS, Cisco is tried and true. The Cisco line has the 1111 series, which is an all-in-one unit, has the PoE built into it, has firewalls built into it. For a price point, it's a great option. Still has the CLI that allows you to again, put that QoS options in it, but it's not for everyone. If you don't have someone on your team who can quickly deploy that, I would stick with Cisco personally. Go ahead, Taylor, and then George.
The only thing I want to say is the Nighthawk. You said you want to use it on the road. My suggestion would be Nighthawk has 4G capabilities built into it, so take it on the road depending on what you're doing. Also, Ubiquity, as far as their firewalls, I don't find a whole lot of functionality in them. So depending on what you're trying to do, you might not be able to configure it correctly to fit with your workflow. So I agree with JJ, and stick with the enterprise equipment, and I would endorse his recommendation on Cisco.
Go ahead, George.
So I outfitted when I first started. I outfitted my entire home with Ubiquity. I've now got some smaller units for the field. I think as we move forward with NDI and other things that we're doing, that's what I'm using right now. And I'm not an IT guy, but it's been beneficial to me to take Ubiquity out in the field. So that's what I'm using.
Yeah, go ahead, Beiju.
Yeah, I just got to go on the Ubiquity as well. That because if you're not a networking guy, its interface is a lot simpler to use. It's a lot easier to manage. The issue with Cisco and a lot of the other stuff is that it gives you a lot of capability, but it's very difficult. The other thing I would probably say is that if you don't need it all in one unit, try and split up the firewall or your network management, the switches, and the access points. It'll give you a lot more flexibility, especially coverage-wise or stability-wise.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
One more thing, that NETGEAR Nighthawk X6 is Wi-Fi 5. You might want to think about getting something Wi-Fi 6 because it's gonna go fast, disappear fast. So
let's jump to the next question.
Jason Sipe in Murrieta, California says Apple's WWDC is about 48 hours away. What is the panel expecting and hoping to see and hear?
Hoping is a big thing. But what are we expecting to see? Anyone have any? I think that, go ahead, George.
So for me, MacBook Pro is on the top of the list, but moreover, more Mac Minis. I think a lot of us are looking at the Mac Minis for a lot of workflows. So definitely keeping my eye on the Mac Minis to see what's coming.
Yeah, I have to admit, I was about to buy some more Mac Minis, and I was just like, I'm going to wait until Monday. It's just that would be crazy to buy any hardware until Monday. Go ahead, Nigel, and then Craig.
Yeah, I'm hoping not to see a Mac Mini with an M2 chip in it, because I really don't want to buy one, and that would be really hard to resist.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Go ahead, Craig.
That was my comment was going to be. It was an M2.
Mm-hmm. Or M1X. I think a lot of us think that it might be an M1X with but bigger pipelines. And I have a feeling, I don't know, I don't have any information, but I have a feeling that these chips are going to accelerate very fast. So I think that we saw something. The M1 was incredibly fast, but I think what we're going to see is every update is going to be way faster than the update before it. It's not going to be incremental. And I think that's why I think the rest of the industry needs to be really concerned, because they don't have any way to do that. They have no dials to turn that up. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then TJ.
If an M1X or M2 or whatever the next chip is going to be, if they announce it, you don't expect it to come out until October. That's usually when the releases happen, unless they have a developer model available. And that's like last year, the developer model was just by rent. You had to return it. So that's what I would expect if any hardware shows up on WWDC.
You go ahead, TJ.
Regardless of whatever chips they release, or I just want them to have an additional Thunderbolt lane. Because right now it only has one lane. I want that second lane in there. That's the thing I really want, regardless of the hardware spec.
Taylor and then Carl.
I didn't see this, but I'm wondering if they're going to do anything live this time around, or if it's just all going to be pre-recorded again and streamed.
I think it's sold as a lot of pre-recorded. I think they've already said they're going to do it all pre-recorded. There's still one-on-one sessions and other things that are going on where people can sign up and discuss it with engineers. So I think they have that on their website that they're promoting as well. Go ahead, Carl.
Some form of raw video via the iPhone would be nice. They've got the power to do it. We know they've got the power to do it. So it's just about them switching it on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it'll be interesting also to see what happens in the AR market. I think it's this year or next year we see a developer version of other AR tools. So I think that, I feel like it's getting close to the surface, of where things are going to happen. And I think that I still, as many people know, believe that AR will be bigger than the phone. Like it is, from the tests that we've been doing for the last decade, and watching the technology mature, it's just, it's massive, like what it can do. And I think that Google got out their way ahead. So we were doing tons of tests with the Google phones early on. And so knowing what we could do with those and knowing that Apple's building a more complete platform for it is pretty exciting. And one that is out to 100 million units, not when Google came out with theirs, we had LiDAR in a phone 5 years ago. But the problem was that there was, we had to order our own Google phones, Google's own technology from China directly, because they weren't putting them in the Pixel. It was just it was like the nuttiest rollout I've ever seen. And that's what killed it. They could have been 5 years into this otherwise. Go ahead, Jason.
I want to see what they do with lighting and shaders, because if you take a look at the WWDC picture and image, there's a lot of reflections that are going on in some of the glasses of the animojis. And so if I'm seeing a lot of lighting and reflections like that, I can definitely see some hardware acceleration and seeing what they're going to be doing with graphics and how they're going to integrate that in.
What I was thinking about with that is if you pull out your phone and you look at it, it could use the other camera, the wide angle, to grab reflections and put it back on the memoji. I don't know whether they're just trying to sell something, but you could totally use that image as an environment and then throw it right back onto things like glasses, which would be really interesting. So we'll see. Next question.
Next one's from Carmi Vineswig in Redondo Beach, and he says, what are the top 4 features that Keynote has that make Alex prefer it so much for presentations over PowerPoint?
There's something it does with text that I'm just talking about leading and kerning and stuff like that. There's something about it that it displays it better. Number 1. Number 2 is it's also anti-aliasing is better. So the anti-aliasing on the text is better. And you may think that that's a little thing, but the higher quality anti-aliasing makes it look closer to paper. And that is a really important, piece of that. The next thing for me is the animations are really easy to use and really, really powerful. The nesting of the animations, we were talking about this earlier, and I don't know if Carmi has I don't know if you asked, maybe you asked it somewhere in here, Carmi, but I think you were telling me that you were going to ask about. I'll just show it right now in just a little bit. I don't do I've been moving away my presentations from doing them under the screen and instead doing them over. And I just have to, one problem with the ATEM Extreme is that, and it sounds crazy, but the fact that I don't have access to both my DSKs, I think I have this set up now. Oh, there it is. So here's Keynote. You can see that here. If I play. So one of the things that you'll see here is this is how all of my stuff looks. Now I've been starting to comp under it. So instead of going over the video, so instead of me trying to key myself over it or do a picture in picture, I'm just putting the graphics in here under it. And so that I can just, this was a thing that I had to talk about myself. So anyway, so this is all just Keynote, and I'm just tapping on a screen, and all of these things are just kind of popping up. And all those animations, this takes very little time to make this actually work. And, so this is just me talking about folks that I've worked for, and but now what I did here is I'm going full frame, but what I'm doing there is I'm reducing the contrast by 2%. And by doing that, this is a Luma key. And by doing that, it keeps it from keying. So that's what I'm showing kind of behind the scenes. There's all of you. That's from our little website that Ken Jordan put together. But as I start to work on this, I really hate Chromebooks. So anyway, so as I this is me talking about the kit that I think would be really cool. We'll talk about this in more detail in the next hour. But anyway, the point is that as you start to tap onto these things, you're putting this together is really instant alpha, that kind of thing. And then this is this is incorporating both the Telestrator and the piece here. But the main thing is that I have to admit that I've kind of all these little animations all combined with with the ability to really easily kind of put things together, makes the whole thing really nice. But that's how I do slides. And so because I mostly visual, and because I am, so I'm 90% visual, I'm just putting up images that kind of help line that up. I view every letter that I put on a page as a failure. Like every time I put a word on a slide deck, I consider it a failure, and I just go, well, I can't figure out what to do with this, so I'm just going to put a word. Like I can't find a good image. I can't create a good image for this, so I'll put a word. But it's literally I fight to get rid of every single word that I put on a deck. So when you operate that way, then Keynote really is an entirely different thing than everything else, because it lets you do visual stuff really effectively. And so that's the that's the difference. Go ahead, TJ.
You just reminded me the only good thing about a live presentation on stage at WWDC is to see what they do with Keynote.
Yeah.
That's the only good part of it.
Well, and I don't have the example right here, but one of the things that I got really excited about, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I have it available, but one of the things I did is I took a 3D object, a USDZ object, and I put it into motion, and then I rendered it out as a 2D object. And then I put it back into Keynote as a and then within Keynote, I was able to have it rotate around, a 3D object pop up, rotate around, and then pop out while I was talking. It's a different deck, but I know that eventually we'll be able to do that without having to go to motion to make that happen. But still, even with a $50 app, to be able to have a 3D object that you can kind of pop up and move is pretty impressive. Go ahead, George.
Alex, would this be something that you attempt on a live stage when you're moving, or this is something you would think you'll just do stationary while you're seated?
I don't know if I'll ever be on a stage again. Like, I don't know if that'll ever happen again. Like, I'm not interested. So, I mean, someone have to pay me a lot or put me in front of an enormous number of people to make me willing. The last time I was on stage, I'd kind of given up on it. I didn't want to do it anymore, because I was this system here that I just showed you and me being able to draw is what I've been using for 10 years. And there was some point where the difference between what I could do on stage and the difference with what I could do sitting here was so different that I just felt like I was being crippled, to be on stage. Like, why? And so I would have people just bring me in over Skype. I just say, like, it's better just put me on a big screen. And I did like 4 or 5 presentations that way to different events where I just said, just put me on screen, I can talk to everybody, we'll figure out that back and forth. And so I was able to have that conversation. This is not COVID. This is like, 6 or 7 years ago that I started doing that. And I was doing it in, Rwanda since 2012, 2013. We're talking to the students, there and doing those things. And that's how the system got built. Anyway, the last time I was in front of people in person was for Justine's vlog conference, her vlog university, which was great. I mean, she collected a bunch of people, but the interface to the room was painful. Like it wasn't, like she brought in the best people, but dealing with the presentation limitations of every conference room that you have in existence. In stages, I find, I just get bad audio. I can't draw on things. I can't interact with people. Like, why would I do that anymore? So I don't have any, I probably don't need to worry about a stage, because I'm not going to do that ever again. Probably maybe once or twice in my life, but I don't expect to do it again. I expect to have this kind of thing, maybe standing up, maybe somewhere with there's a bunch of things, but it'll all be some studio. I guess I'm just past it. Like, I'm past the need to have people in the room, and I'm past the need to do that. I think that it's too inefficient. Go ahead, JC.
Can you explain how you brought in the Keynote over your live video? I know you're Telestrator, but that seems like another thing.
Same thing as the Telestrator. It's just being Luma keyed. So it's just pure black coming out of the Keynote. All those keys you see is just pure Luma key. And all I'm doing it's a clip right at the very black. So this is, I'm just right at the very black. I'm doing a clip. Let me see if I can, let's see how easy this is to show. And I know we're going to run over if I don't hurry up. We'll do another thing about that. But it's just, I'm just clipping really, really right at the very top. That allows me just to pull the black. If it's pure black, it's going to get keyed. What it doesn't really work for is lots of soft things. So you'll notice that almost none of those transitions had soft like fade outs. It won't do that very well. It'll go pop, because it's going to get down there. So it doesn't, like soft transparencies are things it doesn't do well. So I can do lots of animation. I just can't have it fade in and fade out. If Keynote supported key fill, I could do that, so that would be the next step, to that process. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Rotim Kish in Mazkaret, Batia, Israel. I recently came across PEPLINK's products. They have routers and cellular routers that make a true internet bonding. I wanted to know if anyone from the panel has worked with their products in the past, and I would love to hear your opinion about PEPLINK products for live broadcasts. Where's Tucker?
We've used a lot of them, actually. So our truck had a PEPLINK in it with 5 modems, and they're really powerful. Now, when you look at the internet bonding, remember that you have to have another piece of hardware somewhere else. So we had it in our DC facility. So we had 2 gigs going in, or 2 gigs available to it, to make it work. So it's on the other, you have to have something catching it. I think that PEPLINK might have a cloud service that we haven't used. But I know that for when we were doing it, we had a hardware appliance on the other side, a 1U appliance that is going to get that and then serve up our internet. So what the service PEPLINK's providing is bonding it to something. I thought that they were working on a cloud service. I don't remember whether they've done it yet or not. But what's nice about it is it gives you a ton of control. I can serve up these modem. You can create all these VLANs, and this one is just this modem. That one's the Ethernet. This one's the Wi-Fi, and it can be grabbing all of those and mixing and matching them. So it's for us, it was an incredible solution. Beiju.
Yeah, they have the cloud service. You can run the receiver end on AWS. So you're sitting on one of the biggest net connections there.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a little after when we were buying hardware, but it's great. Next question.
Next one's from Roberto Barrow in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. How is Alex talking when his panel on Zoom is muted?
I think that was from the pre-show. It's because I'm in twice. so while you guys are talking and I'm making breakfast, I've got the headphones on and I'm just I'm listening to everyone and making breakfast and then jumping in and talking because I can't. At first I was like, I just have to listen because I had my own FOMO of the great conversations that are going by that I can't hear, and then I now I'm interacting a little bit more, but that's how I'm doing it. If you'll notice, there's 2 of me and the other one's my phone, is how I'm doing that. Next question.
Wait, did you just hold up the AirPod Max?
They're great.
Ooh, tell us.
But your audio is so much worse on those than your mic.
Is it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's going to be worse.
But they're $600 headphones. You'd think they'd have a somewhat decent mic.
Turns out physics is a problem. Just doing good. Physics is always, this is a different, I'm much closer to this one. It's right in front of me. It's a different, like if you put this mic onto this thing, it would be really heavy. So the audio isn't as good. But the quality is, here's the thing is, I get that there's other headphones that are better at $500, but they have a bunch of other wonky things. This one integrates, this is what Apple does well. It just integrates seamlessly in with my phone, and you turn it on and I've got little controls and it says, this person called, would you like to answer? And and there's all this like bits and pieces that make it comfortable. The spatial audio is really good. I was listening and the noise reduction is really good. And so anyway, as we kind of get ready for WW and while we're talking about all the spatial audio, I think Apple's announcement of spatial audio had me just go, I have it on my AirPod Pros. And of course I have it in the office, but I was like, I should really have the target solution. So anyway, I bought them and I'm really happy with them. They're super comfortable. I don't know if they're comfortable for everyone, but they're really comfortable for me. They fit my head just perfectly. And I find myself, my AirPods I got a little tired of over time. Like if I'm wearing them all day, the battery on this lasts forever. And I find myself literally wearing like for hours and hours and hours at my house, just wandering around with them. Yeah. You put them on and you just kind of forget that they're there, and the audio is really good, and it's just kind of there. So yeah, there we go. So there's a couple of us that are doing them. All right. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Carmi Vineswig in Redondo Beach, California. And he says, is it possible to do keyframe animation in Keynote?
It is. I don't do a lot of Keynote keyframe animation, but there is a keyframing tool in there to keyframe animation. So you absolutely can do it. It's not the style. Usually when I'm throwing things together, I'm doing so many decks that I don't stop to do the keyframing unless I really have to, and I haven't done it for a while. I do use a lot of the fine tools in there. I connect a lot of things. So the Ninja tool inside of Keynote is the what is it called? Display order or whatever, or event order in Keynote when you do build in and build out. Because everything, if you didn't notice, everything I do is build in, build out. Like every single item. There is no like turn the slide on. There is turn the slide on and then start building things into it as I talk. Because that's how you keep people from reading it while you're talking. You want the visual information to appear with the audio information. That's how people remember it. That's how it makes sense. That's why it's more interesting to watch. And so everything about what I do is build in, build out. And the magic move is the other Ninja tool, which is that you can have things, scale up and move around and animate and do all these other things from one frame to another, which is really powerful. But that build order at the bottom of the build in, build out, you can group objects together and you can give them all different little timings, and you can do everything. So you hit click and they all go do a bunch of different things at the same time. We could probably do a second hour on Keynote. Maybe we will. We'll wait see what Apple does next week and see if they release a new one, because what I'm waiting for, of course, is USDZ, which there's no information. I'm just hoping that someday Keynote will have USDZ. I feel like it'll be in the next couple of years, and it's going to blow the doors off of everything else, because once you're able to do all those animations and have a 3D object come in and go, arrive it and pop out, and you can rotate it around while you're talking, from an educational perspective, it's going to be explosive. Anyway, next question.
Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas says, with everything being purchased online now and with chain techie stores like Radio Shack and Fry's gone, does anyone still have any local independent brick and mortar mom and pop go-to stores for essential components?
And go ahead, Carl.
So we're kind of lucky in Australia. We still have JCar. So they've got still over 200 stores.
JCar is amazing.
So you may hear about JCar from some of the Australian participants. They have an engineering catalog, which you can download for free. So their engineering and scientific catalog has a lot of stuff that a lot of people on the panel may be interested in. But unfortunately, they only ship to Australia. So you'll need to have a reshipping from Australia to elsewhere if you found something that JCar make.
JCar is what Radio Shack could have been. Like, it is amazing. I was in Melbourne, and I needed a C13 cable that went to the Australian outlets, and I just had to find the nearest place that had a C13. I walked into JCar and I was like, what is this? It was just geeky, and it's got little maker stuff, and it's got, but it also has all the basic stuff that you need. And I had a conversation with some pretty high level folks at Radio Shack a long time ago. And I just said, you have the one national brand that can do maker, stuff. That's what you should focus on. Stop doing all this cell phone stuff. And they didn't do that. So, Rupert.
Yeah, so I just asked the question because there was a place here in Dallas, literally mum and pup, in fact, grandpup, and then mum and pup, and real old school place. And you'd go in there and they were babysitting the kids, but they had everything. But now they're gone. And it's just like, where are those places now?
Yeah, there's one in San Rafael, California called Electronics Plus that we all go to for those kinds of things. And it's nasty looking, and it smells like electronics. That electronics store smell? It just has that electronics store smell when you walk in. It's great. It's just like the waft of it as you walk in. You're like old cardboard and weird stuff and everything else. It's just, you're really going back to it. Okay, real quick. Jeffrey, TJ, and JJ. Pretty quick because we're way behind. I'm going to have to speed up.
Really quick, yeah. A lot of the hardware stores have some of the stuff that you get. In fact, I was surprised that somebody like Lowe's or Home Depot didn't buy Radio Shack and put it in their stores, and I'm still hoping that's going to happen eventually.
Yeah, JJ. Or TJ.
So,
one of the J's.
I'll go. Like I was going to say, Jeffrey said, don't forget your local hardware store. They have a lot of stuff you would be surprised at.
A quick comment about Electronics Plus is it's so geeky. Right next door is a fencing studio.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Next question.
Next one's in from Mark Horner in Seattle, Washington. And he says, will the DVE Store come out with a Guy Cochran action figure? His superpowers often seem to save the day, and he's quite the contortionist behind the camera while delivering money shots on Mad in the Kitchen.
I think it's a good plan.
You got an action figure.
I know.
Get a bobblehead doll, maybe.
Everybody should have their own action. Oh, so who's going to make Guy a bobblehead doll? Okay, that can be done. That can be done. They do those. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Carmi Vineswig in Redondo Beach, California. He says, would Alex show his Keynote Telestration demos? I think we just did that.
I did that. You know, the only thing the one thing I'll say is that just to go back, the one thing I didn't kind of talk about here is what's kind of cool is if I did I pop that back up? I am not. Oh, because I didn't. Never mind. Sorry. So one of the things that's cool is when you have two downstream keys. So if you're going through this stuff here, and I talked about how this works, which is easy. See that fade? That's what doesn't work. I just didn't fix that. So anyway, so with this, what's great with two downstream keyers is then you can say, okay, so that you want to do movies and then discussion, and then you want to have people working on things. So it's the mixture of these is really useful to have a telestrator along with the ability to do it. So do two downstream keys, and I have the downstream 2 is over top of downstream 1. So you have to decide whether you want to write under or over. I want to write over. So my telestrator is on downstream key 2, and my presentation is on downstream key 1, so that if I talk about something and write over it, I can. And I just will say that the mixture of these two is pretty lethal when it comes to talking about stuff. Next question.
Do all the ATEMs support two downstream keys, or is it only the more advanced ones?
The extreme. The extreme, has two. Most of the upper, anything over $1,000, I think pretty much has two, but I think that the minis are only one downstream key. So you can do a telestrator or you can do the thing, but once you go to the extreme, if you're looking at a mini, especially a Mini Pro, my recommendation is just to save a little bit longer and get an extreme, because you're just going to want the super source and the multiple downstream keys along with the outputs, which I've a lot of times have filled up. So it's a really useful thing. Next question.
Jonas Dottel in Reutlingen, Germany says, what functions does a playout system need to be used as a 24/7 playout TV system? And he has a note that says, thinking of 2 playout B with an ATEM Mini Pro switching.
Yeah, go ahead, Rupert.
Yeah, so I guess maybe the note covered one of my ideas, but if it was true 24/7, then I would have 2 of them for redundancy, and take one out of service and put the other one back in. Also, watch out for heat if they're both running all the time.
Yeah, you want to look at on the air, and I can't think of it, and then also Softron makes a playout system, and you want to look at what those do and look at their feature sets. If you're looking for something simple, the big thing is you can have something that's playing out. What really gets tricky is scheduling. So I need to know that things are going to happen at the top of the hour, things are going to happen at the bottom of the hour, and what am I going to go to fill when I'm 66 seconds, so for instance, if you watch the BBC, you'll notice at the bottom of the hour there's weather from all over the world. That, I don't know what it is now, but for a long time that was a Mac Mini with a Quartz Composer going out to grab data, just automatic data, pulling it in, and doing all of that stuff was in Quartz Composer, just kind of making stuff, and they could just cut to it, for that last, sometimes you'll notice it's really short, and sometimes you'll notice it's long. They're just using that as a way to even out their hours, and so you need stuff like that, and the ability to do that stuff like that to kind of to make sure that certain things come on cue, especially like for us, it would be not a big deal, but for commercials, a lot of times those commercials are scheduled for a certain time, and so you want to have it very close to that time. So that's one of the things that makes real playout systems, and the ability to reorder things while it's playing is important for a lot of folks. Beju and then Taylor.
Yeah, one option for a more budget option is that you can use vMix. There are third-party softwares which let you act as an external scheduler to swap out files, set a specific playout time, swap whole playlists out. So there are some small TV stations which are actually using a single or dual vMix system and flipping between them.
I think Jonas is threatening to make his own. That's my guess. So I think I'm trying to give him all the things that I need so that I can switch over to the Broadcast B. Go ahead, Taylor.
A couple things. If you want to do audio and video for playout, one of the pieces of software I use for my LPFM is called Station Playlist. You can go to stationplaylist.com. The software supports both audio and video. It has scheduling built into it. It also has add-ons for traffic control. An open source option for audio only that runs on a Linux platform that you could run on a Raspberry Pi, but of course you'll need more storage, is AzureCast. You can visit more information there at azuracast.com.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So I run a 24/7 channel using Wirecast and an old computer down in the basement, and it's just basically going from video to video to video. I did try vMix. The only problem with vMix is after about 24 hours, things just like to shut down, and you gotta. But that was about a year ago when I was testing it. That might have changed, but Wirecast has been the one that's been pretty solid. And then I go to multiple channels, including YouTube, Twitch, and Periscope. And then when I go on live, I can just bump in from this station down there, and then go from there. So it's no scheduling. So if you need something with scheduling, like Alex said, you'll need to do something else. Another way is OBS with VLC. VLC that does really well.
Let's go to the next question. We're going to move pretty fast because, man, the producers were very effective.
Tim Holm, San Lorenzo. Has anyone explored the new NDI 5? What are the best features that are new and useful?
I think it's out for most of us yet. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, it's not out yet. There are a couple people that have beta tests on it, and there are a couple of YouTubes out there, but can't get it just yet.
We're working on getting some folks from NewTek to come in. I think that next week is probably going to be another re-gearing week. While we work on getting the show like really figured out, I wanted to kind of take advantage of that, and then we'll start going back to stuff. We'll get some folks in. Next question.
Actually, on that note, there was a great presentation yesterday on Streaming Alchemy. One of the guys from NewTek actually did a big discussion. I didn't have a chance to plow through it all. I wish that they had 2x on Facebook, but you can't play it on 2x. So I think I'll catch it on YouTube and try to play it faster. The next question is...
That is the problem with live presentations, isn't it? You're like yeah. I need you to go faster.
Go, come on, faster. James Babbitt, there is a place on apple.com to register for office hours, WWDC edition. Please discuss office hours, bring a global conversation to WWDC.
Yeah, so you'll notice that there is also a website that Ken put together. It's officehours.global. And so that is up there. We're going to make a couple more changes over the weekend. And then it's Renee and I will have a couple more heads to put in there soon. I'm collecting emojis of some of the developers. And so this is going to be a slightly different show. It'll be, it's still going to use Mukana. We're still going to have it opened up for questions. And really what we're going to be doing is it's Renee and I, as well as 4 Apple developers. And it's really there to talk developer. It's just like, this is what they saw. This is what they're interested in. This is where they're going with it. This is why it's important. This is what they wish they saw. But it's going to be open to questions. So basically what we're going to do during the day, we're not going to, I know I'd ask people to help edit stuff. We're not going to try to edit anything because if we try to grab stuff from the keynote, it'll block it on YouTube. so we're going to just talk through it. But what we're going to do is we're going to pick out the 5 or 6 subjects that we think are the most important. This will be a really interesting process, and we're going to tag them. And so then what we're going to do is let you ask questions that are tagged to different releases that are there, comments and questions that are tagged to those. And so then when we jump to those, we will display them for us and go through them. So we're kind of grouping a lot of conversation. It's 2 hours or so of discussion with those developers. And so it's kind of like a big second hour that we're going to do, but it'll be a couple hours long. And we'll have a time when we're all hanging out together before it at 5, and then at 6 o'clock though, it'll be like a broadcast, and it'll be those folks with all of you, hopefully, as well as new people that are interested asking questions. And so one of the things we'll depend on our group to do is maintain control of Mukana. So this will be a new thing because we have a lot of new people coming straight into it. And we'll need to, there are flagging tools and you may have to use them. So we won't, those will be things that we'll work on. Go ahead, Baishu.
One question then. Is it a separate registration from the normal office hours, or is it?
It will be, and I'll send it out on Monday. Yeah, and all of you will get an email that gives you that's just specifically for this, along with the new folks. But generally, you'll be able to. You're not going to Zoom. You're just going. If you can, all of you can go into Zoom if you want. But the best experience will actually be on the web page. It'll just be in Mukana's desktop version or whatever, and just opening that up will be your best experience of the show. So it'll be really designed for that. Anyway, it's coming up. It'll be interesting. It's an experiment in how do we. It's been the impetus of like right now why we're building up our look and feel, but it's an experiment with how do we want to cover conferences. So I want to start targeting it. My goal is that we get to one conference a month eventually, on average, that we're doing some kind of coverage for. My plan is for NAB and IBC to do things that are. I want to get a room. So I don't know if I'll get both of them, but like a room near the convention center, and then be able to bring people over and talk to all of us. And we don't have to go anywhere. We can just sit in the comfort of our own home and have conversations with folks that are making great products. And so I think that that's going to be another way that we do it. This way is just a discussion about those things because it's Apple. And so we're going to kind of play with that. Go ahead, Nigel, and then Taylor.
Yeah, if you can't do the Monday, will there be a replay?
Yeah, it'll be, it's on YouTube. You'll be able to watch it. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Taylor.
That would be cool, Alex. Folks in the panel who live near these conferences, if they could bring office hours to there and have us all see, that would be awesome. I'd really enjoy that.
That's the plan. So we're going to keep moving forward on that. All right, next question.
Rupert McRae, Dallas, Texas. Thoughts on Polk audio speakers?
Go ahead, Carl.
So I've always thought that Polk is a little bit the entryman level versus SVS. So in America, SVS I would consider be the better purchase at probably $100 or $200 more. Polk is trying to be the poor man's SVS. So I would suggest SVS, but if you don't have the money, Polk isn't too bad.
I spent a decade carrying some Polk speakers around that I loved. I bought them when I was in college and just kept on going. Big ones. I spent a lot of money on them. And but they went from one city to another for a long time. TJ and then Rupert.
Polk's been a fairly reputable brand since the 70s, I believe. One thing with audio, look at the warranty that you're getting on the product. A lot of companies, the length of the warranty they offer kind of tells you how they stand behind their product. Polk has a 5-year warranty on most of their speakers. And with audio, everybody hears a little differently. Everybody has different hearing, literally, because some hear highs, lows, everything. Audio is very subjective. If you find a pair of speakers or a setup you like, that's all that's important. If it sounds good to you, that is the most important thing.
Yeah. Let's see here. Sorry, I guess someone walked in while I was talking. I just lost track. Let's jump to the next question.
Gus Leiby in Satili Beach says, where do we sign up for the office hours post-WWDC keynote and post-platform State of the Union meetings?
You don't need to do anything. We'll send out an email. It's just going to go. You just need to know to go to officehours.global. So that's where everything will happen. So you'll know that. It's hidden in the website right now. Ken has it. So all we have to do is flip something on, and it'll be available. So anyway, so that'll be easy. Next question.
Yash Mori, Washington D.C. Anyone know when ZoomIso will come out of beta mode, or can I buy a license now?
I think it's pretty close. I don't want to speak for Andy, but I think it's pretty close to the surface right now. So, next question.
Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. Why are company HR departments so eager to stipulate office dress code and acceptable behavior standards, but pay no attention to Zoom and video policy, or do they?
Go ahead, Carl.
I used to work for one of the biggest employers in Australia, and they're like massive ships. So they take a long time for their official policies to actually change. So I have a feeling that this actually will happen in larger companies where they will have an official policy on conduct on the Zoom calls and the quality of Zoom calls. But at the moment, the dress code and that kind of stuff is ingrained from decades and decades ago.
Go ahead, Rupert.
This was something I, in fact, just witnessed recently as people begin to filter back into the office, and some corporate guys come in. Maybe they were literally sending out these emails saying, hey, these are the types of pants that are acceptable, all down to all this level. And I thought, well, we've been working on video all this time, and if a similar amount of attention had been given to that, some of that stuff may have been more successful.
Right. Yep. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Is there an effective virtual assistant?
Effective. Nigel and then Rupert.
Yeah, there's some really interesting new ones emerging, like Josh AI, if you've never heard of it. So one of the problems with like the sort of virtual assessments you have around the house, the typical brand names, is you say open the shades and they say, well, which shades, which room? You have to be very specific. Whereas you're starting to see AI come into things like Josh AI, where it knows which room you're in. And if you use the wrong room name, it goes, oh, you really meant the dining room. So you'll see those emerge as, but they require cloud backends to make them work.
Right. Next question.
Jonas Dottle asks, can Nicecast stream surround sound?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so.
I would say I don't think it does either. I think it depends on the codec, and it also depends on your bandwidth too. You probably need an intensive amount of bandwidth.
Sorry, I got a little problem here. I'll be right back.
I'm going to go ahead and move on with the next question. It's from Douglas Carmichael, and he asks, in Grass Valley's announcement of supporting physical K-frame control panels with AMPP cloud platform, one quote was that TDs know the panel so well, it's like playing an instrument for them. Would that be applicable to any type of content, not just music? And how could one develop switching skills? And note, he has a note here for the press release. Let's go ahead, Carl.
So the reason why these TDs are really good at it because they do a lot of shows. So practice makes perfect. So if you do a lot of shows on a particular console, you'll get better at switching, and you'll get better at solving quick problems too on the fly.
All right, let's go on to the next one. Another one from Douglas Carmichael. He says, it seems like the concert industry is rapidly picking up speed with full-scale concerts and tours being announced. Could you see the concert industry taking cues from what you have done on Office Hours Man the Kitchen to streamline budgets without compromising quality? He has a note that says, example, using Unity and VPN services to link geographically distributed crew to save per diem cost, using audio-video control services that could be flown or put in a bus, baggage bay, or even touchscreen like LV1 instead of battleship-sized services like the Digico, Avid, and the S6 Live S-Class. And let's go, Rupert.
So I actually posted a question on the flip side of this a couple of days ago regarding Live Nation and how they were investing lots of money in outfitting a whole series of studios across the country for what they called turnkey live streaming. And I believe there was also a story recently that Black Magic were involved in, again, a turnkey streaming studio somewhere. I'll try and find a link for that. But there's people on both sides of this fence.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to see. We've got these Zoom rooms where you can have them auto answer and have these PTZ heads, and we're doing it with Matt in the Kitchen right now. I'd love to have those turn into front shots. You know, where we let viewers or somebody from afar control those cameras. So you drop 5 bird dogs or something like a Panasonic, super nice broadcast quality, and when we send out this kit, it's just a laptop with a nice camera and a mount, and we just say, you guys hook these into Ethernet, and we'll take it from there. You know, that would be a great fly pack. TJ?
Well, I'm just wondering, you would have to guarantee that you had the proper bandwidth at any facility you were doing a concert at if you were to do something like that, if you wanted to have people remotely. And that just gets into all kinds of logistics that you may not be able to deal with. Whereas if everybody's on the ground there, you know it's going to be handled.
Well, I think that a lot of times what really works for a lot of these things is to build it into the facilities. And so that's what I think that a lot of people are looking at is how do we build all the camera systems into the facilities? And what we are seeing is a lot of facilities are also looking at, when you look at the revenue model of people coming into your space and wear and tear and process, and then you look at the idea of making money with people online watching, if you can figure out that model, you just stop having people come into the room. Like that's as soon as they figure out the model to do this, you're going to see more and more music studios that are figuring out ways to bring the online audience in so they can interact with the artists. But that's where the ROI is. So and you always, as Sky will often say, follow the money. Following the money it's going to make more sense for a lot of bands to play without an audience once a handful of bands start proving they can play to 1 million people without having to fill a stadium. The first couple of concerts like that will create this kind of gold rush, towards building these kind of facilities that are there. Next question.
Next one's from Juan in Mexico, and he says, what is the on-deck option in Mukana desktop? And more important, how do we use it?
I believe the on deck just tells you that we've moved it out of the voting area and we're planning to use it in the future. So there's nothing to use other than we're using it in the back end. It just gives you feedback. Before, what happened was the thing just disappeared. People said, what happened to my question? So we're just telling you that it's going somewhere. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says, with Alex's comment about Apple Silicon accelerating quickly, do you think the audio-video software vendors will keep up? For example, I own a Waves SoundGrid Studio system, and they have not announced a timeline for SoundGrid support on Apple Silicon machines. Note, also Avid has not announced support for Pro Tools on Apple Silicon yet.
Eventually, I mean, I think you can get away with it for a while, but eventually they delay at their own risk. Go ahead, Carl.
I think once we see a Mac Pro with expandability that has the M1 architecture, that's where we'll start to see the big boys start to play.
Yeah, there gets to be a point where if they fall too far behind, people will leave them behind. So they have to, they can do it for a while. Pro Tools has been doing it for a long time. But at some point, they're going to have to make the change, or people will replace them, or Apple will add more features to Logic. Next question.
Perry Miller in Chapel Hill says, Apple nominated Voice Dream Reader, a text-to-speech app, as one of the year's top apps. Are there any other text-to-speech apps you would recommend?
Voice Dream Reader is amazing. That's all I have to say. I listened to 192 pages of a NASA report, without it. And the only problem is people's references at the bottom. I wish they'd just make sure to put the bibliography at the very end, because otherwise I have to listen through it. But it does a really good job. I don't know of anyone that's better. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asked, when I applied to a major broadcast company's entry-level program a few years ago, my application was rejected because of lack of broadcast industry experience, even with extensive experience in IT, server/desktop support. Note, considering that the media broadcast industry is taking more and more skills and technology from IT, would it make sense for broadcast production businesses to open up more to the IT world as a potential talent pool?
Go ahead, Sky, and then Jason.
Well, originally we had a lot of copper in the ground, and engineers were the gatekeepers into the broadcast industry. Since we've moved over into the IT world is really owner of broadcast now, and the distribution is through fiber and an OTT, so over the top. Consequently, yeah, those gatekeepers are now old and have long ponytails and wear Birkenstocks, but not much of a job anymore, oftentimes.
Go ahead, Jason, and then Taylor.
Yeah, I think you're just a little ahead of your time. IT infrastructure is now coming into a lot of broadcast places. So I've just been looking at the new studios. They've been integrating a lot more. People are just switching out their copper for fiber.
Yeah. Go ahead, Taylor, and then Craig.
I can say a little bit. With working with iHeartMedia, you'll notice on their job posts they're looking for more of IT rather than a traditional engineer. They're also switching out studios with voice over IP consoles and stuff like that too. So yeah, it's definitely taken a shift.
And the real thing is being able to mix the two together. So just being IT does not help them. Like, you have to come in with understanding the video and audio architecture. So taking advantage of some of the stuff we do here and working through those things is really important. You can't just go in as an IT person. You have to go in with an IT person that understands video. We're going to keep moving because we're running out of time. So we're going to take like one or two answers and just move through it. I know we're going to be a little late for the education, but we're not going to be too late. So the next question.
Chris Taylor, Winter Park, the answered Mukana links do not seem to be moving over to the linked YouTube answered question section. Is that easily fixable?
I think that's...
Chris Peterson's working on it right now.
Okay, good. Yeah, there we go.
Jesse Mills in San Francisco Bay Area, in the style of Jeopardy, for 500 production points, the way a Stream Deck can be plugged into a LAN RJ45 port and auto-linked to a running version of Companion.
I'm not sure what the question was there. Oh, the way to... Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jason.
What is question mark? Go
ahead, Jeffrey.
What is no? Okay. You're going the wrong way on that.
Go ahead, JJ.
Bit-focused companion.
What is? Yeah. No. What is next question? Oh, that was a confusing question.
Douglas Carmichael says, with WWDC, for example, and Apple virtual keynote events using mostly pre-recorded content, how would they be making sure these elements are played out at the proper time? Would it just be loading the files into a server and clicking go, or would a playback operator be following a director? Note also, how would they be coordinating the crew when physical distancing rules preclude putting lots of crew into a confined space?
The live events are generally run by, if it's really going live in front of the number of people that watch the Apple keynote, it's still going to be people doing that. I don't think they need to be in one place, and VPNs allow us to be anywhere. But probably the scheduled VODs that are just coming out as VODs and not streaming live are probably scheduled. But I don't know what the machinations of that are. But I can tell you, with a live event, you don't usually schedule it to go live. you wait, and you have a lot of people paying attention to it when it goes live, especially for the number of people that watch the Apple keynotes, which are in the millions. No, next question. Oh, I can't hear you, Guy. Sorry. Guy, can't. You're muted, Guy. Oh, there we go.
Oh, sorry. Douglas Carmichael says, when I saw the band Cheap Trick a few years ago, the front of house engineer was using a Midas XL200 console versus the Yamaha PM5D digital console that the sound company provided, because the engineer liked the sound he got when he hit the preamps harder. Note from my experience watching Office Hours and Mad in the Kitchen and the importance of quality audio for communicating a message. Clearly, isn't the general rule that red is bad and hitting the input stage too hard is something you do not want to do? Case in point, Mickey TJ's village use of the meter.
Go ahead, Carl.
So with a rock band like Cheap Trick, which is like a modern version of the Beatles, like a rocky version of the Beatles, they have a lot of rocky sounds. So what they're actually using is the preamps in the actual ingest, so the big box that has all the preamps and the microphones coming off the stage. So the guitar amp is actually just a microphone in front of the guitar amp. They're not usually feeding the guitar into the desk. So they actually want to overdrive the preamps as well. So it's got to do more with the guitar, the bass, kick drum and stuff like that. Other ones aren't going to be over. The vocals and the softer sounds aren't going to be over. But those guitars are going through microphones into the desk, so they do want to run them hard again.
Yeah, go ahead, Craig. No.
Yeah, exactly. The harder with preamps like Midas and big sound consoles, high-end preamps, the harder you hit them, you get different sounds out of them, and it depends on the design of the preamp. So you actually get a much warmer or liver sound from it.
Next question.
Jim Hankins in Chesterfield, Michigan. I recently added an OC White Ultima boom arm upon Alex's recommendation. This is the boom arm I was looking for. Geez, I need one, man. This one's not a good solution.
Painful. Yeah.
What other similar purchases have you made for your use in studio that provides that never look back experience?
So many. I guess I feel like I've bought so many things, and then I've just kind of settled into certain ones. So my ATEM, the 6K, the NAND lights, the underslung Ultima. I think for me, those are the things that USB pre or mix pre 3, or Scorpio in my case, but the mix pre 3. Yeah, so there's a lot of those things that I feel like I've settled into, but I bought lots of other things before I got there. Go ahead, TJ.
Yeah, the microphone, the Heil, and the Mix Pre 3 are two items that I have never thought about replacing in amongst all the other stuff I have gotten.
Yeah. Next question.
Mark Giuliani in Alexandria, Virginia asks, in the past, Alex has mentioned what .ping files have rough edges. What type of files have offer transparency with smooth edges?
And I'm speaking specifically of how they interrelate with the ATEM switcher. The ATEM switcher doesn't key the ping files very well. And so you see some aliasing. It looks okay, but not great. And you'll get a better key if you do a pre-multiplied TGA, which, that's how you get the very fine edges. Otherwise, you'll always see a little bit of aliasing. Go ahead, TJ.
And the TGA file format stands for Targa.
And it's really old, and it does something that, we probably go spend a half an hour talking about TGA, but anyway, we'll keep moving. Next question.
Perry Mitchell, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. The ability of ISADORA to move the Zoom grid to a round table experience blew me away. Am I correct that it will produce a more personal and engaging experience? Is it possible for Office Hours to experiment using it in one of the shows?
We're definitely going to be using ISADORA in a variety of areas of the show. I don't know if it will put it into a circular thing like that, but we'll definitely be doing things like that. I do think eventually we'll stream. I have an idea that eventually we're going to be able to stream to VR. So think about using like Facebook venues and being able to sit and look at all of us in screens. We are not going to key us like into some weird things like that. Is No, but imagine a bunch of screens that are at 180 degrees that you can kind of just see us all, and you can put on VR and sit there. And I think that could be sometime in the fall. Jason, and then Jesse, and then TJ, but like 10 seconds each.
Yeah, really quickly. It was the VR experience that really kind of got me. I could totally see interaction with students and seeing them play back and forth with that.
Yeah, Jesse.
I think as much as I like the sort of theater in the round that was demonstrated, it can be skeuomorphic in a way. I know someone talked about using it for addiction treatment, but Alex, you always talk about intercepting the communication and having that dead on look.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a gimmick for some things.
Well, in our case,
Or
we're
it's
not
got
really
its
looking
place.
over. We're still going to look at each other, but it'll have its own. It's just how the viewer sees it. TJ.
Yeah, I also didn't find it that compelling. It was an interesting technology demo, but I much prefer the one-on-one aspect that we get here, even when watching the show like on YouTube.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, when you're using Windows-based systems live for visuals, Unreal Engine 4, Unity, Resolume, etc., how do you guard against audience visible crashes and Windows issues, i.e. blue screens, freezes, visible windows, desktop displays, etc.?
Go ahead, Carl.
Redundancy can be one, so have the same thing happening on two computers. So if a physical computer goes down, you got redundancy, or use a Mac.
Redundancy. And for the record, we use Macs and do redundancy. So we have two Macs that are running on most of those things all the time. And a lot of us do. Not everyone, but when you're backstage at a big event, you don't see a lot of Windows delivering the keynote slides. You know, that's a pretty unusual thing to see. Yeah, go ahead, Jason. Except for one company.
Yeah, I was gonna say redundancy and stress testing. I don't like to take anything over 70-80% of its capacity.
And mine is 40 to 60%. Like if I see something going over 60% its capacity, I usually worry about it from an event perspective. Yeah. Next question.
Next one's from Elliot Byron in New York City, and he says, is there a way to mute Zoom if I need to briefly listen to something else on my laptop? And he notes that the laptop is a MacBook Pro.
TJ.
If your speaker has a control that allows you to change the volume from within Zoom, you go into the Zoom audio settings and you can lower the volume temporarily in Zoom, the Zoom audio settings in the controls there. And I do that fairly frequently.
Because I have a lot of different outputs for mine, I just throw it to a different out. I have a Stream Deck output that I just like send it to and it doesn't go anywhere. But it's just, I just go, okay, go there, and then it's quiet. So I do that a lot as well. All right, we're going to invite our educators in. So if you have questions about education, and while we do this, I'm going to go ahead and stop the live stream. So thanks for watching, for everyone. And Taylor, I think I need you to turn off the live stream. Just hit stop. And then